Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and it's time once again for Talking Movies with Professor O. And good morning, Professor. We're going to be talking about Star Trek. This is the 2009 version J.J. Abrams and Company produced.
Oh, what a film. What a film. And it just takes you back to, man, were we ready for this film or what? It was in a
Yeah.
sense, it was almost like Star Trek the Motion Picture in the sense that it had been so long. We'd had some good, I mean, plenty of good Star Trek series, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, but there had been just a gigantic break between the movies, between Nemesis and this film, and it really felt like, hey, we're back. And
It
so,
really did, and I think your idea that it was kind of like the Star Trek the Motion Picture is that it also was very much a visual fest. If you recall, the motion picture
oh,
had just so many great visuals. This one did too.
yes, absolutely, 100%. So many in a very different style. That's what a good point on your point too, because you think of the style that the motion picture is trying to emulate, trying to come up with, and versus the visual style of this, and this is J.J. Abrams. I mean, for I know he can be controversial, but I think he nailed it in the sense of we want a visual, a lot of eye-catching visuals, but we're gonna do it in the spirit of the original series.
Yeah, and they seem to be respectful of the original series. In fact,
Ah,
Abrams wasn't certain that he could do this, and Steven Spielberg, interestingly, convinced him to take on this project. And I have to say that, among other things, one of the things that I liked, speaking of visuals, was the amount of scale that they had. The engine room, the shuttle bay in the Kelvin ship
right,
was actually an abandoned power plant in Southern California.
right.
The engine room in the Enterprise was a Budweiser brewery near Los Angeles. And the big tanks were actually beer tanks that just put radioactive
God, he
on
wasn't kidding about the
them.
plumbing. I mean, yeah, that's and you always think, they gotta have water in the ship. Well, how's that? Now we know how it works. That's
Yeah, that was the one scene that I wish they hadn't done because I mean, it's if you remember in what was the spoof movie that Sigourney Weaver and Tim Allen were in, where they go through this area and they have the things that are trying to smash them, and she
Galaxy
said.
Quest.
Galaxy Quest. She said, "Who wrote this scene?" And
Yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking the same thing about this movie. They have Scotty in a water pipe. They didn't need it for any reason, but to have Scotty in the water pipe.
Yeah, that's what they needed it for. Yeah, well, they beamed him there. Yeah, that's where he beamed it. Yeah, that's funny. But no, and you're right. J.J. Abrams really, I think when he was talking to the cinematographer, and he said, he was saying, I want this on location. I think the cinematographer in his mind is going, how much can we do this on location? Star Trek, you do on sets because what location you going to do? But
Yeah,
then they did Iowa. They did building the ship in Iowa, on the ground building the ship
yeah.
in Iowa on another plant that was already there. I forget what kind of plant that was, but that was an existing plant. Um, Maybe a refinery or something like that. But it's a plant in yeah, I believe in
I'm not sure about that.
yeah, but when you think about it, and I saw some scenes where it's just the plant itself, and it's like you described. It's a plant. Only this one's outside. Um, there's Iowa itself driving
Yeah,
the Corvette. Um, I'm thinking there was another kind of exterior. Oh, stuff in the snow to a point, but I'm thinking for
yeah.
some
That
reason
was
I'm thinking
done. That was done in Alaska. They wanted to do it
that's
in Iceland. They
yeah.
couldn't get permits to do it, and so they did it in Alaska for Delta Vega.
As much as their thinking was as much as possible, let's have physical places that we can augment digitally and augment with green screens and then add in digital effects, but fundamentally they were physical places. And there's a deleted scene where when Nero is captured by the Klingons,
Yes.
and that is a I think that's a warehouse. And speaking of though, kind of where we're going with the shooting of it and actual making as much of it as practical effects. Um, they did forced perspective. They got these little kids to dress up as Klingon guards because this warehouse wasn't that big, but to make it
Yeah.
look bigger, you diminish the size of the people that you see in the background where our minds are thinking, oh, these people, Klingons, are always 7 feet tall or at least 6 feet tall. And but instead they're little kids, and
Yeah.
it worked beautifully.
It did. We were talking about this in Casablanca, how you never knew what shape Rick's Cafe was, and they
Oh,
did the same thing with Nero's vessel. They rearranged the things to show different parts of it. It was all the same set.
that's amazing, and it works beautifully. The thing just, yeah, yeah.
It was so
I,
chaotic. I mean, you couldn't really get a handle on just what the inside of the ship looked like because it had different levels, and they say actors like to have things to jump up and down on, but this worked out pretty well on that.
But
And
I could see Nero's crew actually maybe saying, we know as we get older, we've been here 25 years. Why don't we build some steps between these pod structures so we don't have to jump from pod to pod to pod? Because yeah, it
yeah,
was so chaotic. You had to jump around in Nero's ships. But yeah, and one more forced perspective one that I lost track of. Oh, there's two, and you probably read about that. The home in Iowa, they built a model. It's like it looks like a kind of maybe 2 or 3 story, but not
yeah,
still kind of a modest home that would have been the home. And that is simply a model that they put close to the camera,
yeah,
and with a wide angle lens, and they got forced perspective with that. And then even in I don't think this scene was in Alaska probably, but when Kirk is running into the tunnel to make the
yeah,
tunnel look big, that's a little kid running into the tunnel. The very first shot when he's being chased by
wow,
that, yeah, that's more forced perspective. So I just really admire the simplicity. And they actually shook the camera too. That JJ would go around for you forget how much shaking of the camera is behind the
yeah,
scenes. So many scenes. I mean, just scenes not just on the ship when it's being shot at, but scenes on planets and anytime you can have some shaking, instead of digitally shaking, they're literally shaking this giant Panavision camera.
yeah. They did that in the jump. I understand the parachute jump that they did. They had
Right.
that with a shake in that, and yeah, they said every once in a while JJ would go and slap the camera to cause a shake
So
there.
with the
But
parachute jump, one of the most interesting things that they did, they were filming with actors hanging upside down with green screen. And finally, somebody realized, if we put a mirror on the floor, a big mirror, and have the actor stand on the mirror and film down at the actor, and the mirror picks up the sky, it's just a practical effect. And
yeah,
so all the shots of Kirk looking up, he's literally standing on a mirror, and those are clouds in Southern California that with
yeah,
the cameras aimed just, I mean, so simple. That's
yeah. They shot that in a parking lot, I believe, and the reason that they did it that way was because when they were hanging them upside down, you have to do multiple takes. All the blood ran to their heads, and it was causing problems.
that's right. Like losing consciousness.
Yeah.
Just that. Yeah. That's oh my goodness. Just such a simple. They sound like they had a ball figuring these things out. Just
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for the way that films are made. Nobody just writes it and just read the script and then do it. There's always some kind of experimentation going on, at least in the good films. And I think that I don't know if I've ever seen a good film that didn't have some playing around with it while they were going on.
some experimentation and the willingness of because officially the chain of command with in making a film is you can't have a grip come up with the director to say, hey, I got an idea for this. You just don't do that. But
Yeah,
but I think JJ, he probably didn't necessarily ask all the grips what what would be what we need to do next. But at the same time, I really believe him when he said he encouraged a set where where if you had a really good idea, you could see things were stuck, then you might come to him or talk to somebody that would go to him because he
Yeah.
looked like he was looking for a free flow of good ideas to get out of these, come up with a better way of doing something. And that mirror, wow, that was amazing.
Yeah.
That was,
Let's talk about the very beginning of the film. I think
oh,
this
you
was
got
the
it.
most effective beginning of a film there ever was. In that they have all this, they start, and you it takes you a moment to realize that the person that they're calling Kirk is not James Kirk, and the ship is not the Enterprise, and it creates in just a few minutes a very tense situation and a tearjerker at the end.
Yeah. I mean, within uh, 8 minutes,
Yeah,
I've seen one article was we're talking about that broke it down within 2 minutes. I think basically the captain had relieved himself, was gonna, I mean, 4 minutes tops, but the captain
yeah,
had relieved himself, was leaving the ship. You actually cared for the captain. So many things you capture so fast. So many, it's funny. This show, this film initially divided Star Trek fans. I think we're less divided now, but I'm sure we both knew some individuals that said this is just not Star Trek. It's breaking too much of the canon. It doesn't feel right. And I was not one of those people. But speaking of the way Star Trek should feel, that's an Indian captain, probably
yes,
from the subcontinent of India, and just so fast and instantly he feels like a little. Maybe you think of how would he be as captain? He's very stern, but he cares for the crew, and within literally 2 minutes, has relieved himself. You realize he's giving his life for the ship, and it is the best start ever. It's incredible. You're exactly
yeah,
right. That's and it's just so well done because you're just soaking in for information so fast. It's not the right Kirk. Um, the wife is pregnant. Yeah, you're thinking, wait a minute, okay, maybe this is, and then all of a sudden we hear James Tiberius Kirk. But
yeah.
oh, what else struck you from the beginning? What anything?
Well, it was that you could see that it was hopeless to begin with. They were way
Right.
outgunned. They were way overwhelmed by this huge ship. Nobody had ever seen it before. Nobody knew where it came from. One of the bridge crew says, "Are the shields even up after the first hit?" I thought it gave a lot of things that you could relate to. Whereas it's more than just shaking the camera at the point where they get hit with something. They're surprised. They don't know what's happening. They don't know how they're going to deal with it, and they're basically flying from the seat of their pants.
Oh,
And then Kirk, clears the bridge, sends everybody into escape pods, and rides the thing down himself. I mean, who couldn't get emotional about that, huh?
oh, exactly. As the baby's born, gets
Yes.
the name gets the name as the baby's born. Even makes a joke about Tiberius.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's the worst.
apparently, yeah, apparently David Gerald came up with that name with Tiberius. In the they
Yeah, they first used it in the animated series.
exactly. He was writing the episode BEM for the animated series, and
Yeah.
he'd been reading. You're spot on. He had been reading Greek mythology, and so he was thinking, what does the T stand for? And he just decided Tiberius at that point. So, but oh, that was a good. That was a nice touch. And then the movie doesn't. I mean, you've got this poignant beginning. It's so fast. 8 minutes long. I mean, it's
Yeah.
incredibly fast.
I think
Is
they
the
even
next?
make some reference to it when Pike is talking to Jim Kirk in the bar. He says, he says 12 minutes. He says, your father was captain for 12 minutes, saved 800 people. You can do better.
That was fantastic. I love that scene in the bar. I just
Yeah.
that yeah that, and you know that film. It's funny. So sometimes in the craft of screenwriting, I think, can be so much of it is a craft, but you're thinking of all these points that you need to hit, and you need exposition, but visual things things need to be happening while you have exposition. Actors love things to do, and so sometimes you can see a film doing that. This one, it all of that's there, but you don't see the film doing it. You're so caught up in good acting, good story,
Yeah.
that it just feels
They're showing you, they're not telling you.
exactly. That's
We know
exactly right.
everything we really need to know about Nero from that first scene, and then the rest of the film just follows in. And
Right.
so I think just for that first scene, and I think that sold a lot of people who might not have normally been regular Star Trek people. And the box office on this, it cost about $100 million to make. It made about $350 million in
Oh, three and a half times.
yeah.
Right.
So that was probably one of the biggest successes the Trek films have had.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And it just doesn't stop moving. And they were in looking at. I hadn't seen the deleted scenes. I had years ago. I bought a 2-pack DVD with this film with it's with extras. And so many times Star Trek doesn't give you. At least they didn't used to the deleted
Yeah,
scenes. They
yeah,
seem to have gone back. And so we would have seen Spock being born on Vulcan. Which is kind of a beautiful scene. It's a nice scene. Of course, the Vulcan woman that receives Spock.
there's a joke there where Sarek says to Amanda, he has your eyes, and she says he has your ears.
Oh, that's right. That's a nice one. It's a good deleted. And then, as we're kind of going through the film, the next deleted scene would have been the father, the stepfather, telling the brothers to clean up his Corvette, and very sternly, strictly ordering them. And finally, the older brother just can't take it. He's literally going to want to run away, and so
Yeah,
he leaves. He says, "I just can't be a Kirk in this situation." It kind of says that this guy, I'll never be a Kirk with this stepfather, and I think they kind of call him an uncle. And so he leaves, and the younger kid washes the car. Then he sees the keys, and you know what he's going to do with the keys. And
yes,
so, as it is in the movie, speaking of keeping things moving, the deleted scene is good, but I completely get it. You go from the Kelvin to a Corvette in the film that we see just racing through Iowa, and even losing its top, and just beautifully, so the film keeps moving, and then
yeah,
it's not until the cop picks up young James T. Kirk. Then we put two and two together. What's your name? James Tiberius Kirk. I think the kid says Tiberius at that point, but it
yeah.
just absolutely keeps moving. And then the fight in the bar. And what's your favorite part about this part of the movie, Professor B? As we go along, we've got the fight in the bar, and then you know the next day. Anything strike you as stuff you enjoyed?
Well, there are a number. I mean, the scenes all kind of pay off. They said that they had to film this with the kid 1,000 times for him to get it right, and
Oh,
it's interesting. The Corvette had an automatic transmission. They show him shifting in a couple of places, but neither. Beyond that, we have this whole idea that he's answering the phone and listening to the voice of his stepfather, who's played by Greg Grunberg, who's been in
ah,
all of J.J. Abrams' stuff. And
ah.
they couldn't get him in, so they put a voice in as him to make him at least in the film somehow. But anyway, yeah, the bar scene. This is an interesting thing. I mean, once again, this whole idea of whether the Federation uses money or not is kind of silly, because you hear people still ordering things by brand names. Ahura comes in and wants a Bud Classic, the obviously product placement, and a shot of Jack, and then there's this wordplay between her and Jim, which is fun, and
Yes.
the Norm guy at the bar who's just kind of sitting between them, kind of wondering, can I get out of this scene somehow? But and then of course, I love the line where there's four of us and only one of you, and he says, "We'll get a few more guys. It'll be a fair fight," and it's going to be a bloody fight, and yeah, the whole scene where Pike comes in and says, "While you were drooling on the floor, I looked up your test scores." So, that was nice. The next scene, though, I kind of liked the motorcycle that he's riding. Futuristic motorcycle that doesn't have spokes in the wheels, and the sound effect of it was from the Jetsons. That was the sound that the Jetsons cars made.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
And that scene where they're boarding the shuttle, remembering it in 2008. Yeah, because first time through, you're just agog.
yeah,
You're just trying to
yes,
keep up. You're just amazed. You're impressed, and you're also just plus you're putting two and two together. This has started 25 years before I thought it would start. But then you meet Carl Urban, you meet Dr. McCoy
yes.
on that shuttle, and that's for me. That's where things started to feel that comfort factor started to come
Oh,
in
I loved
because
his line. Let me see if I can find his line real quick, because that was one of these kind of things of that was just. I mean, it put him specifically as Bones. You would know who he was just by what he said. He says, "Don't pander to me, kid. One." Let me put myself on. Here we go. One tiny crack in the hull and our blood boils in 13 seconds. Solar flare might crop up, cook us in our seats, and wait until you're sitting pretty with a case of Andorian shingles. See if you're still so relaxed when your eyeballs are bleeding. Space is disease and danger wrapped up in darkness and silence. Kirk says, "I hate."
it's so
Kirk
good.
Kirk says, "I hate to break this to you, but Starfleet operates in space." And he says, "Yeah, well, I got nowhere else to go. My ex-wife took the whole damn planet in the divorce." That was one of the best lines in the whole film.
Just incredible. And that line, some of the criticism of the film, where and some of it's more. There was hardcore fans. I remember some hardcore fans that would never accept it, like one in particular, and then there was and then sometimes there's some academic criticism of it that it's and they use that line in particular to say this film is disowning science fiction. It's disowning the future. It's disowning the love of science, the love of exploration. And I just no, that is Dr. McCoy, and Dr. McCoy does his job. He likes exploring, but that is his personality. Even back in the yeah, and of course, so
Yeah,
many of the much of the criticism will hold up the '60s version and disown the 2009 and but they that is Dr. McCoy even when they were exploring in space. That's who he was. They're channeling him perfectly.
oh yeah,
And
I think so.
yeah, and when you think about it, when you've got 470, I don't know who they had. I don't know how they had 800 people on the Kelvin, but you typical Enterprise 470 crewmen,
Yeah,
and
they played with scale. They wanted, the original Enterprise was supposedly 750 feet long, and this one was, 1,000 or 1,500 or
uh,
something like that. They wanted to make it great big in scale, and that was part of their deal in doing the engine room like they did, and running down longer corridors and things like that. So
right,
I think they wanted to give a bigger scale, a bigger concept to what the Enterprise was.
a cinematic scale, a
Yeah,
movie scale. Yeah,
yeah,
that's that, and so yeah, that's where you get but in that crew, you're going to have completely competent, good crewmen that do their job,
yeah.
and they know they're in space, but not everybody is necessarily going to be just that have that explorer mentality, and it's perfectly fine that Bones does not, and that is his person, that is who he is, and they captured it perfectly. But to take from that and to say the film is anti-science, I think is ridiculous.
No.
Um, it does stretch science. It
Oh, of course it does. Any science fiction does, and Star Trek has always been one of those things that will go science until we need something, and then we'll add something to it. What do they call in the next generation? Excuse me, the next generation, the Heisenberg compensators on the transporter, which of course Heisenberg's theory, of course, is that you cannot uh, uh, put a molecule in a place at a distance and know exactly where it's going to end up. And it's
is
perfect that it's a reason that transporters would never work.
that and right, and that's I think that's some of the criticism. It's funny you mentioned the transporter because in this same article, some of the same it's when they're saying they just make up fantasy science, and of course that's part and part. It's still science fiction, but that's part and parcel of of some of the later films. Well, that's getting back to the criticism.
Yes.
It deals with Scotty and his ability to do things to a transporter that's never been done before, but they needed to be done.
Well,
And
it's an interesting thing in the scene where they bring in Scotty. Also, a great exchange of lines there. Scotty was in the latter parts of the original series movies being kind of a comic foil, which I think did not do him well, honestly. But in here, they were able to make Scotty just a little snarky, and I liked that. He was saying that one of my favorite lines in here is he's looking over Spock's formula for transwarp beaming, and he said it never occurred to me it was space that was moving, which is an actual scientific thing. Is that if we were to achieve faster than light travel, it would be space that was moving, not us. That way, you don't violate any of the Einstein formulas.
that's exactly right. And that harkens back to when we see the developing of the idea of what it is to warp. They kind of had arrived at that, or they showed it better in the motion picture, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, really exploring what
Yeah,
warp is. You're folding space, and the idea that it's moving. And I thought that was a great. I'm glad you mentioned that line because I thought that was a terrific line to at least give some scientific cover to, or and maybe kind of realistic cover to what to Scotty. Not real, at this point in his life, he didn't realize he hadn't thought of that yet, but it completely made sense. They needed to beam those characters to that place, and they got them there. And Scotty ends up in the water.
yeah. But my favorite in that first meeting of Jim and Scotty is Spock says reason you don't know about this theory is because you haven't invented it yet, and he
Right.
says, so are you from the future? And Kirk says he is. I'm not. He said, in this future, do they have sandwiches?
I love that line. You realize how for accidentally losing that beagle,
Yeah,
in a transporter experiment, how far Scotty has been, where he's been placed in a terrible place, miserable place, and he's just looking forward to a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's
yeah,
that
yeah.
is a great line.
Anything other than dry cat food, which is what he had basically. So that was kind of the thing on there. So he was thinking more about food than whatever they had to tell him about. He wasn't ready to go and jump up and say, "Oh yeah, let me fix something for you."
You
But
got to be careful with these dogs. When you're using them for beta testing. It's amazing Einstein came back
it
from
is.
last
I
week.
they said that they couldn't figure out a place to make it work, but they wanted Porthos to beam aboard the Enterprise at one point during the film,
Oh,
just as a little aside, and not mention it again.
oh
But
my! That would have been. Oh, that would have been brilliant.
yeah,
That would have been brilliant. That's wow, wow. One thing. It's funny when you said that, my mind went to, and we'll get back on, stay on target. Stay as
yeah,
our one of our best. Don would say, stay
wrong,
on target. but
yeah, wrong
but
franchise.
yeah, this, but the You took me to deleted scenes just with the dog coming on. Well, I love this. There's a deleted scene where Sarek notices Spock, old Spock, notices Spock Prime,
Yeah.
and it never really talks to him. But that is a deleted scene that if they could have worked that in, that would have been neat to have just where his father could have seen. Wait a minute, that's my son, yeah, and he realizes who it is. It's just barely off to the side. One other fascinating deleted scene, though, that it's a whole plot, kind of a plot that's not there. Is if you haven't seen the deleted scenes, is the fact we always kind of wonder what happened to the Kelvin. Well, it goes into a when it goes not what happened to the Kelvin, what happened to the Narada, and it
Yeah.
goes back into a Klingon part of space.
Yes.
And Nero is put in a Klingon jail for 25 years.
On
25?
Rurapenta, yeah.
Yeah, Rura Pente, of course, which is a wonderful callback to Star
Yeah.
Trek 6. And yeah, he is put in some sort of jail. There's a strange alien that gives
Well, he's
away.
tortured as well, who cuts off part of his ear, which you see when the Enterprise encounters him, and they never explain it.
They never do explain that. That's exactly right. Yeah, and the novelization was done by Alan Dean Foster, and you get some more of those, some really
Yeah.
good pertinent details. And so they find his notes. The Klingons
It just
find his
slowed it
notes.
down too much, and that's something that I kind of missed when I first saw it, was that, 20 years later, he wasn't just sitting there waiting for them.
Right.
He was-
That's it.
he-
Didn't,
Yeah, they had just managed to escape from the Klingon prison, get back in their ship, and head back to where well, I don't know if it was the same part of space that the wormhole was. It may be that they were just in Federation space by that point.
right. But waiting for Spock, and then Spock does. They capture Spock's ship. That's where I get. I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
going on. Yeah, they capture Spock's ship, capture Spock, and put him on the planet so that he can see Vulcan destroyed. I mean, talk about revenge. And
Yeah.
apparently, Nero did not speak until Spock came aboard. That was part of the plot too.
Yeah.
Because his second in command would always do the speaking for him. When he's dealing with the Kelvin, Nero does not speak.
Oh, by the way, do you know who voiced that second in command?
No.
Will Wheaton.
No. He
Yeah,
voiced,
he voiced all of the Romulans except for Nero.
except for Nero. That is beautiful. What? And again, I think some of the criticism directed against J.J. Abrams is he was born in 1966, so he never
Yeah.
had the chance to see the show live,
Right.
the original show. But he did enjoy the show. Does he describe himself as much of as a huge fan as probably you or me that watched? I mean, I lost count how many times I saw original series. I would just
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
come home from junior high and I especially watched it on reruns and watched it every single day and again and again and again and again. And so
Yeah.
JJ didn't know the series quite that well, but he really admired the series. And so he gets this kind of criticism, of not really embodying the series, but to have the sense to have the wherewithal and the to pay an homage to get Will Wheaton. That says a lot. That
Yeah.
says a lot about real care and knowing.
Unfortunately, it was uncredited, but
That is amazing. I did not know that. That's I had one little line real quick that deals with this kind of timeline. It was a line, I think it's from the novel. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, this is okay. This may be a little later. Dr. McCoy, Ambassador Spock takes heart in the chance encounter. Dr. McCoy would assert our meeting here is not a matter of coincidence, but rather an indication of a higher purpose. It may represent the time stream of way of attempting to mend itself. We know far too little about the physics of such deviations to determine actualities and can only speculate on how they function in the greater continuum. In both our histories, the same crew found its way onto the same ship in an ultimate crisis. Therein lies the adventure. and that's when after running into the Kelvin timeline, Kirk and Delta Vega, the marooned ambassador Spock takes heart in their chance encounter. That's, of course, that's not exactly a line I was thinking of, but kind of getting back to those deleted scenes. The
Yeah.
one thing that it does connect to, and this was an interesting article, getting back to some of the start of the film, is that this basically this writer views Nero as a trickster character, and he looked at what do the trickster archetype, what do tricksters do historically.
Yeah.
Nero is one of the more destructive tricksters. He's such a bad guy, such and it's, but and they give, all villains have got to have a point of view. We've got to
Right.
know what made them do this, and of course it's a loss of his family, his entire world. You
Sure.
get it.
Well,
But
it's
man,
the same thing as happened to Khan. Khan lost his wife, his daughter, many people of his expedition, and he had nothing left but rage, and that's where Nero is.
exactly. And so you can understand, empathize to a point, and so he does all these things as a trickster character, but with a real grudge and a lot of violence. But nonetheless, they kind of point out that trickster characters create alternate realities. It's kind of like what a trickster does is because of their personality, it's like, I'm going to do this. This is something strange and different because I'm a trickster. So basically, he creates the Kelvin timeline, which of course drove a lot of fans that you and I knew crazy. Some
Yeah.
people didn't like the Kelvin timeline, but basically, it's kind of like a trickster pocket universe. But in this trickster pocket universe, it's like a beta test for the franchise, for fans, for even the actors. Does this It's like a little pocket where we now have a Kelvin universe, and you've got the idea. It creates the idea of almost like a preboot, where you've got, instead of rebooting the franchise, you came back before it started with this little experiment, and you can say, does it work? Do you like the idea that Kirk is now different? But it's so much has changed because his father got killed, and in this little pocket universe. And I mean, think about, all the things that happened from that. Spock is kind of amazed. Spock didn't expect that to happen when they get together with Scotty. Spock is
Yeah.
realizing, wait a minute, you are supposed to be in command of the Enterprise, and
Yes.
you're not. And so this whole little, it's almost like an experiment. And it's all created by the trickster character, and that's where that line was at the end. It's finally evening out. And I never had thought about this. It's going to be interesting to see where this fourth movie goes that you were talking. That sounds like it's been kind of greenlit, right? The fourth film is
No. In
no,
fact, it's redlined. It's
it's
redlined.
oh, that's oh,
They're
gotcha.
not going to be able to. They basically said that Chris Pine and Zoe Saldana and other actors have done so well since this film came out, and they had only a 3-film deal from the beginning, so they would have incredibly higher prices going into a fourth film, and so they've decided that they're going to do more Trek films, but it's not going to be with this crew or in the Kelvin universe. But I
That's what I
thought,
missed.
you were
I remember
talking.
you.
You were talking about, though, the using the Kelvin universe. I think it was an ingenious way to basically keep the fans from saying that's not canon. Now,
Right,
this is one of my bugaboos because if you have canon, basically indicates you have a series of books that are written by the same person,
right,
or in biblical things, it's something that's been approved by a group of experts. In
right.
television production, in movie production, canon is ridiculous. The idea that stuff that has been made by different people over different decades should all agree with each other. I mean, we grew up on Lost in Space. It didn't agree with one episode to the next. So I think that in order to enjoy this, we don't necessarily mean to work it. But the genius of using this alternate universe is that they're not bound by anything that's happened or any history that's been already established in the original series, which is, if you're not familiar with it like you and I are, we've been watching it several times a day all our lives, it seems. Uh, Nobody would know all the details necessary in order to make it all add up and not contradict itself.
Right, right. And we were talking before the show. We were talking a little bit about, and that's why I realized that the new actors were not. They were. You're right. Red lit. They knew the same actors were not going to be allowed. But I didn't realize that was the closing. It makes sense. That is the closing of the Kelvin universe. And we won't have any after Star Trek Beyond of this experiment started by Nero with his little pocket, kind of the idea, kind of a pocket universe almost, an experiment, and we can see how this works. And I love the way it works. What you said was exactly right. It creates, instead of having to follow canon, we've got this branching timeline that allowed for so much freedom and play. And one thing I had not noticed is that as the films have gone on from to ending up with the third film and beyond,
Yeah.
they're collapsing. They seem to be bringing the Kelvin timeline more in conjunction with the canon, with the already established timeline. I didn't realize that they had kind of been doing that, but now we'll never know how far they were going to take that because but Ed,
Well, I do
exactly
like
right.
the whole idea, though, that you could not have different actors play the same characters was disproven in this because, I mean, I can now see Chris Pine as Kirk. I can now see Simon Pegg as Scotty. It works. It does not diminish the performance of the originals on there. And, I mean, even William Shatner sent a note to Chris Pine saying, I approve of you. So,
Right.
you know,
That's
you can't
exactly.
say who can say anything against that. But I think though that they were fairly useful in their backstories. Now, McCoy would probably call Bones because there is a term called Sawbones. It generally is kind of an insulting nickname for doctor, which all they do is, saw off legs to keep people from dying of gangrene.
Right.
And so that's an old term for a hack doctor is the Sawbones, and that's where Bones came from. So this line after I'd quoted what McCoy had said, nothing but my bones are left, they were trying to kind of establish a new deal there.
Another way to call it Bones.
But the backdrop of him having been in a divorce and had a daughter, which they'd mentioned here, but this was all written by DC Fontana sometime earlier to give a backstory for McCoy for him to be able to develop his personality. One of the reasons he's crotchety, he'd gone through a very messy divorce before he joined Starfleet, and he was running away, and so he wasn't particularly in favor of anything.
Right. 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 Just one. I was kind of continuing to where we were with the kind of developing the plot. One thing that and again, it's the deleted scenes was so Jim Kirk gets on that shuttle, goes to Starfleet, and then you cut to 3 years later. He said, "I'll make it through this thing in 3 years." Cut to 3 years later, and then we see the Kobayashi Maru test, and some really nice things. The before the test, we see a scene with Uhura, and she talks about that. I mean, it's so nice the way that layering things in. She talks about there's been 47 ships, the Klingon ships have been destroyed.
Yeah.
And you get enough of this hint of the Klingon ships being destroyed, lightning storm in space.
It says something about how sharp Kirk is. He picks up on that and other things and manages to put it together in just a few seconds once he hears what's going on. This interesting thing about the number 47, it has been used one way or another in every Star Trek film. And they followed that. And now I've got to go back. I don't know exactly where it was used in all the others, but apparently that 47 number has been used in some way in each of the films since the motion picture.
Yet again, J.J. Abrams, like we mentioned with Will Wheaton, I mean, and he doesn't know all this stuff, but he creates a creative landscape where stuff like that can happen and homages like that can happen. That's just sparkling. But so the Orion girl so he hears the number 47 Klingon cruisers have been destroyed. It's massive. And so he, but then the girl says, "I love you." This is in the deleted scene, and he says at 3:10 tomorrow afternoon, you must you must open a note. It's a digital note. You must like open email
Yeah.
and I'll give you my response. So then we cut to the Kobayashi Maru test, and he knows that at 3:10. So then we cut. This has all been edited out. We see the Kobayashi Maru test in the
Right.
film, but we don't see. Then she walks down a corridor.
We don't see what shuts down all the computers, and
Yes,
apparently it's
her opening the note shuts down all the computers and resets it so that Kirk eating an apple, he's so ridiculously confident, overconfident that he's going to win this thing. Yeah, that's what does it. Is she activates it, and it's basically Kirk saying, "I'm sorry, I don't love you, but you played a part in beating the Kobayashi Maru test." The very last deleted scene. This one's kind of bad, but it's so Kirk. It follows up with this way later on. It's
oh yeah,
late. Yeah, you've seen.
I've
Yeah,
seen that scene. Yeah.
yeah, he's been hit, and so it's way later on in the film. He's on the Enterprise, sees another Orion girl with red hair, and says, "I am so sorry. I know you felt used." And then she looks at him, and finally they pull back, and we get a better shot of her, and he realizes it's not even the same girl.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. Yeah. So, but very Kirk. But anyway, but yeah, and then but 47. That's gonna be. We got to look that up. That's gonna be.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Where is that number used? It, and so then by now the plot is fully underway. Now we're on. One thing I love too that you mentioned is, is he had read apparently Kirk has read Pike's thesis about the lightning storm in space. That was like a
Yes.
master's thesis. Is that right?
Yeah, he mentions that in the bar scene. He said,
Oh,
I know about what your father did because I wrote my thesis on it."
that's right. That's right. So
Once
Kirk
again,
was,
this is Kirk after he's had the snot beat out of him and half drunk,
yeah,
remembers this little thing.
Kirk. It shows Kirk putting things together. No matter what situation he's in, he is thinking, and it's just
Yeah.
and he's active, and it's part of Kirk. And especially a young Kirk. This Kirk's only 25 years old. The last
Yeah.
time we saw Kirk was in well after with Generations, and so but
Yeah.
this Kirk is a young Kirk that's. Whew.
This is something that I like the best about the film is that they've always kind of suggested that Kirk can outsmart people, but you never see it. It's never as overtly brought out as it is here. I mean,
Yeah,
they suggested in the second pilot where he beats Spock at chess, and they make some in another episode where Kirk says, "Well, maybe your next captain can beat you can beat at chess," that kind of thing. But that's the only thing that they've said to indicate how smart Kirk is. And in this one, they overtly say that his test scores were off the gauge. And they show him in a number of places here where he is very astute. He's very able to put things together very quickly, or to remember
that putting
things
together
that would seem to anybody else just unusual, but nothing memorable.
No, and when Chekhov, in fact, is I went back to double check how did Kirk, because I love looking at mysteries. How did they actually solve the mystery? One time I was determined with every James Bond film. Okay, how does Bond follow from point A to point B to point? And it's kind of a
Yeah.
silly quest with Bond, but in this case, it was Chekhov saying. It seemed like he described it just briefly in his announcement to the crew, and it is his heavy Russian accent, saying it was like a lightning storm in space. And Kirk hears that, and he all of a sudden he's put everything together, and connected it, I think, to the Romulans at that point, and just because he'd read the thesis. And yeah, you actually see the brilliance in action. You see it happen. Kirk putting things together. And another example of what you were talking about too, we always hear about the Kobayashi Maru test. Here we actually see it. How did that play out?
Yeah.
And and that was a really fun thing to do. That's
Although they said his eating the apple in that was not a parallel to Star Trek Two. They claimed that was a happenstance, that someone on the crew had suggested that if he was eating an apple while he was doing it, it would show that he was really not taking this thing seriously.
right. Well, it worked out perfectly. That
Yeah.
and it just so then of course by now we set in motion the full blown plot. Um, and the one I still can we've talked about it a little bit, but just the is Spock's placement in all of this. Apparently, Spock had gone, and I've been Spock in Spock Prime past next past the last incarnation of Next Generation, past Nexus, which at that
Right.
point would have been the last time we saw the next gen. So at that point, then the supernova is happening, and I've got it feels like 20 years past Nexus that
Yeah.
to use Spock is old enough, got a supernova going on. Spock has developed red matter, which apparently would create a black hole in the proximity of the supernova. Was that the plan with the red matter? I was always a little.
Uh, yeah, it was something. Red matter was something they pulled from other J.J. Abrams stuff. They used red matter and some of their other stuff, and it just was the MacGuffin. But in this case, they claim that this was something that Geordi had developed, and so that's that. And he had also
Future Geordi.
Future Geordi had developed and had also designed the jellyfish ship that Spock was flying.
Oh, the jellyfish ship. What a ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The and so yeah, the it's a jellyfish ship in the future, red matter. I think that came from Alias. I think even in JJ, one of his first series back in 2000 with Jennifer Gardner, I think
Yeah.
there was red matter. Now that you mentioned that,
Yeah.
and so it's supposed to create a black hole, pull in the supernova that is just affecting uh, Romulan worlds and Federation worlds. It's a 9/11 disaster, and but just because he didn't get there fast enough. I mean, he doesn't get there fast enough. He's trying to save Romulus. But just because the Nova encompasses Romulus before he could get there, that is the sole reason that Nero decides to blame Spock. And it's kind of misplaced blame, but it is
Yeah.
on the other hand, it's you lose everything like that. It's makes him crazy, like Khan, like you mentioned. But
Right. There was nothing left but his rage, and Spock was the last person he saw before he lost everything, and so you could have saved us, but you were too late,
and
and
that's
so
kind
that
of
was kind of thing.
nothing left but rage. And to kind of embody that is why he doesn't speak, and apparently doesn't speak for 25 years. It's because he's holding. It always amazed me that he was able to get the crew. Of course, they lost their families, they lost everything too, but still, his crew is very obedient. Okay, we'll wait another 5 years, or or whatever
Yeah.
it'll take.
Well, in this case, I don't think they had much choice. They had been captured by the Klingons in the
That's true.
part that was cut, so they weren't just sitting there waiting. They had
No.
to go back there, and
Oh, one thing that kind of bothered me a little bit is the Klingons use one of these slugs on Nero. You think it's going to be like Wrath of Khan, where they're going to put this brain-eating slug in his ear,
yeah,
but they use it on Nero. Then Nero uses it on Pike, and we don't see it, but obviously Pike never talked, never gave away because Nero wants more information about Federation defenses, and Pike never speaks. That was not followed up on, correct?
that's
Is
true.
that
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, just one little.
Yeah,
We just kind of
essentially, the
gathered.
film wasn't about Pike, so they
No,
just didn't worry too much about that. Just get on to the next scene. He has to be rescued.
but Pike's fate, that's still just seeing it again. When you think of Pike, I love the actor that played Pike. That's what's
Bruce Greenwood.
Yes, Bruce Greenwood played in one of my favorite old UPN series, Nowhere Man, that only lasted a year.
Yeah,
Really, really good science fiction series.
There were a lot of TV people in this at the time, and in fact, oh goodness, Zachary Quinto had never been. This is his first movie.
What I should
He
know.
was
What did
he was
do
the bad guy in Heroes.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly. Oh, and he's perfect for the part. I mean,
Yeah,
just yeah. But Bruce Greenwood, and I always it's funny, his fate here is better than Captain Pike, the Captain Pike in the canon universe. But on the other hand, it's better for a bit until he gets killed in the next film. I never did. I always thought they should have kept him. It was poignant that he passed away, but that he died. But still, I always felt I just love him as a character.
yeah.
Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it was I think it was one of the big problems in the second film where they kill off Pike. I think that he could have stuck along and been kind of a mentor thing as they're trying to do in Strange New Worlds with oh goodness, the Admiral.
right. It's coming to Admiral. Not Admiral April.
April, right, right.
Yeah, right. And because that's a nice thing that they've got going in Strange New Worlds. Yeah, losing your mentor. I get it sometimes, and definitely you can say that this is probably you can look at this film as a monomyth too, and definitely Pike plays that mentor character in if you're in looking at this as a monomyth. But oh God, just so we got Scotty. Let's see, we've got him, and in terms of advancing our plot, I was thinking of anything else we need to because we in terms of looking at the plot, we've got to where Spock has found Vulcan is destroyed.
Yeah,
Oh, do we talk about we one thing before the show we were talking about is just the how they used mirrors when they were it's the
right.
actors right and the special effects when they're and again people nitpick is like why can't they just beam them to some point on that platform that Nero has over Vulcan. Instead we got to use parachutes because they look cool, but
Yeah.
it does work.
Well, the transporter was jammed by the Narada, so that was the thing there. They're having to surreptitiously get there while Pike is going over to the Narada and the shuttlecraft.
And it totally works. And of course, and all the only thing left to fight with is swords.
Yeah.
Just worked perfectly.
It's interesting that the reason Sulu has a sword is because it was established in the original series that he was a fencing expert.
Right.
And interestingly, George Takei was for the Naked Time. In the original series, George Takei was saying, do you know anything about sword fighting? They wanted him to have a samurai sword at first. And he said, sure, I know all about he said, I know fencing a lot better. And he knew nothing about fencing. He had to go and learn it in order to make the scene there. And so that's become part of the character.
He did when you think about the schedule that they're fighting, they've got like 7 days to make each episode, maybe 8 sometimes in the original series. That's amazing that Takei was able to work in some fencing lessons in the Naked Time. That was fantastic. Yeah. What was I? Oh well, I had one more thing and I've lost it on the. But yeah. So then Vulcan's destroyed. Spock is able to. It's interesting. We never see Spock Prime, and it makes sense that we don't. But obviously, he would have seen the destruction of Vulcan by the time we meet Spock when Kirk is with Scotty. More than midway through the film.
Yeah.
Spock saw the destruction of Vulcan. That's just like he was supposed to do, just like Nero wanted him to do. Is miserable.
Yes.
Put him on that planet so he could watch Vulcan being destroyed. And it's interesting. The crew says, "What are we going to do after that?" and more destruction. But yes, and they never cut to even in the deleted scenes. There's not a shot of Spock watching that. But that would have been a big reveal at that point. Too much of a reveal at that point to show that. But so then Vulcan's destroyed, and at that point, we're kind of on the we're on the way to figuring out that Kirk is putting everything together, and we're on the way to figuring out how this happened in the last third of the film. But
Yeah, yeah.
it
Oh,
never stops
another thing
moving.
that I wanted
Yeah,
to point out was when Kirk meets Spock Prime to begin with. They
right.
go into a mind meld. It's the first time we ever hear the inside of a mind meld, and that the effect of having it kind of echoing is pretty good, and it's a wonderful way to give all the backstory you need for this. Once again, as we were talking about, they show you most things instead of explaining it, and this one is instead of Spock giving him the story, he just mind melds, and so uh, we look in on the mind meld to get the backstory that we need in order to understand all the detail of the film.
Right, right. And later on in the film, um, and this builds up to a couple of things we haven't mentioned too. Just it's almost boy Spock's. Well, I'll say this real quick. Mind meld with a dead guy. Spock mind melds with a dead Romulan to figure out or at least thoroughly unconscious Romulan. I thought he
Yeah,
was dead, and he
no, he
finds
was
out.
stunned.
Yeah, yeah. He finds out the location of Spock Prime's ship and also where Captain Pike is
Yeah.
within Nero's gigantic, mining vessel. But
Oh,
the
that brings me to one of my favorite lines there, where, oops, I just blacked us all out. One of my favorite lines here was where it's I forget the name of the Romulan who has Kirk by the neck and says, "What did you say? What did you say?" And Kirk says, "I got your gun." And I thought that was a very clever.
I thought that was I love that. I love that. Yeah, yeah. That's yet again in Trek. If you're kind of if you're a red shirt, your odds of making it are not good. But if you're a pompous red shirt and a little or overconfident, then your odds are just about zero of making it
Yeah.
through. That was a Romulan red shirt, but yeah, God, he was just, oh God, it's funny, and I did sad trek myself with where I was go. I had the idea that mind melding with the either severely unconscious Romulan that was just so smart on, but then that it left me.
Yeah.
The
Terrible to get old, isn't it?
the end of the movie is just so funny.
Yeah.
The lines at the end and we can go back some too, but the lines at the end are just you're mentioning some of the humor with the when and it's poignant, and I love the idea that here is Kirk. It's a different version of Kirk, although but it's Kirk, reaching out again with compassion to
Yes.
Nero. It's like, we can spare you. You don't have to die, and then Spock is like, "What are you doing?" And Kirk
He
says,
says,
"Well, I'm channeling your logic."
it's logical. You should like this. Well, no, not really.
Not really. Just kill him. Just send him off over the cliff into the abyss. And that was and Kirk didn't argue at all. Sure. And then the next line is Nero coming up, beautifully written. Nero coming up, I don't want your help. I would, instead of getting your help, I would rather die 1,000 deaths boiling in hot lava with my eyes bulging out. And Kirk says, "You got it."
Yeah.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Just a good comedy at the end of the film. Just so well written, and then it does make sense. On one of my little nitpicks at the beginning, when I think first couple of times I watched it, was that it makes sense that the Enterprise would be being pulled into the gravity well of the black hole.
Yeah.
But it looks hopeless, and you're thinking it's almost like, in terms of their model making miniatures, probably totally
It was all
digital
digital.
effects.
Yeah.
Say it again.
It was all digital.
Yeah,
That was
all
the first.
digital at
That's
that
the
point.
first. That was the first Star Trek film that didn't use models.
Didn't use one model. That makes sense. Well, digitally, I thought that there was no way it looked like it was so small and it's going to get pulled into the gravity well.
Yeah.
But then again, they make sense. They eject the warp core, and that provides the impetus to for them to be propelled the other way.
Yeah,
Except,
it works,
yeah,
and they get away with it, and you can see on the faces of everybody on the bridge crew saying, "Well, we shouldn't have survived this, but we did.
you can see.
We've been lucky." Now, there's one other thing, and it's not a related anything, is that Scotty's assistant, Keenzer, played by
Yes,
Deep Roy. He is a Kenyan who is, I don't think I've ever seen him in anything else, but he doesn't have very many lines, and most of the time he's just sitting somewhere he's not supposed to be. And I kind of, they bring him in for comic relief, which I'm not sure works so well. Get down.
I not sure they needed that. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure they needed the character at all. I don't want him not to work, but I mean, still, it was one of these kind of things that you usually use little people in. Let's make them, comic foil. And
yeah.
I suppose that there's I should not be the person who is what do you call that when you're defending somebody that can very well defend themselves? Thank you.
Oh, right, right. But I know where you're coming from. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, a little ham-fisted, I think, on their part, and obviously he couldn't make a sandwich. So
He was perfectly okay with the protein nibs, but
yeah, right, right.
you can eat a bean and you're full. So
I still wait. Can't remember the other plot point I was coming. It had to do with where we were. Was where we were kind of going through, because a lot of times we've kind of gone through progressively with this film, and
yeah,
definitely now we're racing back to get to Nero's ship, and then it kind of left me. 2 o'clock
yeah.
in the morning. I'll call you up and we'll start the podcast.
Okay, we'll do that again. It is a very layered picture. I mean, it's very rich, and it leads to a lot of repeat viewing. Because it is not such it's a simple enough plot, and it is very visual, but at the same time they have detail on top of detail on top of detail, all the way to Chekhov's saying in Russian, "Oh boy."
That right.
Yo Yama is and that was ad libbed.
Yeah.
And the
How did you like the characters? We talked. How did you like? We talked about Dr. McCoy. How did you like the other characters, kind of embodying these new actors embodying the spirit of the originals?
I love the interaction between Spock and Bones. It worked perfectly.
Yes.
Bones is supposed to be basically the raw nerve, whereas Spock is the most controlled, and that's what makes the relationship between the two of them work. One of them is very retentive, and the other one will just say whatever comes off the top of his mind, and how they react to each other. Don't you feel anything about this? Well, don't you ever shut up, kind of thing is their back and forth, although Spock always responds in a much more academic nature. Interesting
Right.
that you should choose a stallion, because they have to be broken before they come to their full efficiency, things like this. So it had some very good points in this. Of course, Scotty was perfect for this. He did a reasonable Scottish accent. I think
Yeah.
that he based it on I read somewhere the western region of Scotland, although I understand
Wow.
that Scotty actually came from Aberdeen, so that didn't matter. But
Right.
but of course, people had said that Scotty's accent was not exactly Scottish. He was one who could do accents on a number of things and make believable accents on anything. And
Oh, Jimmy Doohan was
Jimmy
incredible.
Doohan said, I can do any accent," and he probably
Yeah.
could. But I recall that it was Ferguson, the talk show host,
Ah.
said that he started watching Star Trek as a child, and was interested in Scotty because he was a Scottish person like us, and so he said he sounded like that he was an Indian with brain damage.
That's That's amazing. Yeah, and Simon Pegg is with that. You're right. It's fascinating too that he got he's researching his accents. There's a Western Scottish accent, and
Yeah.
it's perfect. I thought Sulu was fantastic. Could have
Yes.
had a little bit bigger part. They gave a lot of things to Chekhov, to
Yeah.
Anton. Yeah,
Yelchin. Yeah. He
yeah,
was he of course has was one of the more known actors in that. He'd done a lot of teenage parts in various things. There's one where it was a zombie picture or something like that. He was very good in. But yeah, I thought that they did give him a little more to do than they did with some of them.
and
And
Ahura was
Uhura had a
terrific.
very good part. Yeah, she
And embodied the spirit of Nichelle Nichols. I mean, she
yes.
just to me just a
They
Nichelle
wanted to
Nichols.
use Nichelle Nichols as her grandmother, but
Oh,
they couldn't. By that time, she was not doing well and
right.
couldn't do that.
Couldn't do. I did remember what I thought of. It's a plot point it got sidetracked with the mind meld, but it's and it kind of comes from the mind meld with Kirk. Spock Prime, and this is just a plot point with good writing. He's
Yes.
absolutely brutal with how Kirk. He says you've got to get command of the Enterprise, and how are you going to do it? And to make Zachary Quinto, our Spock here, emotionally unstable. Kirk, he tells Kirk, you have got to. He is emotionally unstable. He just doesn't know it. You've got to uncover that, and to do that you've got to go after his emotions. You go at the just go after his mother, go after almost attacking him in the same way that the Vulcan kids had attacked him, to make him
Yeah,
emotion.
that is
And
a good
it
point.
is brutal, and but it works. And Spock relieves himself. He realizes that that he can no longer fit for command, and takes himself out of the picture, and then brings Kirk in. It works, but wow, that's brutal. And but yeah, I thought they get the new actors got those relationships down. I wonder if they ever thought about having a Yeoman Rand. I don't know if reincarnating that
I'm
character.
kind of glad that they didn't, because Yeoman Rand was basically the rape victim in the first season of the original series.
Right.
Somebody goes crazy and they go right after Yeoman Rand. They're going to murder her or rape her, or she's the person who gets scared. And
Yeah.
I think that was kind of I don't really know why the character was there.
Her best line, one of her best lines is, "This is something I need." Is that she brings in coffee, and she said they brings in coffee, and I think this is in the Corbomite maneuver, and,
Yeah,
and she brings in coffee, and Kirk says, "I thought the power was out in the galley." She says, "Well, I got a phaser, put it on stun, zap the,"
yeah,
and, and yeah, you read. She could think.
yeah, yeah. I mean, she was a transporter operator in
Right.
the motion picture, and that
That's
was the
right.
last we saw. Well, actually, in Star Trek 3, was it? As the
Yes.
Enterprise is coming back to space dock, she's now working for the space dock. She's got a lot of jobs.
Yeah, a lot of jobs, and her reaction shot of seeing the damaged Enterprise, it was just what we need. Reaction shots allow
Yeah,
the audience. We see the damage, but when somebody else sees the damage, then you go, "Whoa, this ship! How did it make it out?" And her reaction shot is great in that
yeah,
film.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I have
funny,
nothing against the actress. She did very well, but
yeah,
they knew how to write for her was as the
yeah,
damsel in distress, and I thought
damsel in
that
the
was
yeah.
unfortunate, waste.
And we didn't need to be doing that in 2009 or 2008.
Yeah,
2009. Yeah, correct that.
2009.
Yeah, yeah, some nice upgrade. It's funny, again, it gets criticized so much for various things, but I think for some of the criticisms, it gets, you can, I'll take Sulu's sword and go psh, psh, and defend it,
Yeah,
because I think it does a good job of holding up with the spirit. And I love the science fiction of Trek, but the character interplay is as big as the science fiction. It is about
I
the
agree.
characters, and we learn about ourselves and what we need to find in ourselves, our better selves, through these characters. But the exploration of space is also there, and they needed this reset, and they did it beautifully. They needed this reset, and like you said, they needed not to find a way just to get away from canon and come up with a branching timeline. And hopefully in years future, even though they put a red light to the Kelvin universe, I hope somebody else will pick it up at some point, because it just allows for so much fun. You didn't have to go back and make things perfect,
Yeah.
and fit canon. Instead, it allowed for this fun freedom, and it just, yeah,
There's
just
some talk that
absolutely
they want to
wonderful.
reboot Next Generation, and that might be interesting.
Yeah, that's rebooted as going back in the past, or kind of like Picard.
Well, just rebooting Next Generation. I mean,
Or just
it
rebooted,
just
period. With
yeah, yeah. In
wow,
movies, and yeah, there might be something there. Who would you have play those characters if not the original characters?
I
So
recommend using what was Picard's early ship, the Sky something,
yeah, yeah, it was Stargazer.
the Stargazer timeline. I recommend do something similar, and then you get that freedom, and I would love it. You yeah, I could just see um oh God, the Counselor Troy seeing some sort of alternate in this new timeline, and Counselor Troy sees a picture of the first season. Says, "My God, they were making me wear that in that timeline." No, because they had some silly stuff in
yeah,
first season.
as yeah, you have to take into account that Roddenberry liked looking at women, and that brought in Yeoman Rand, and that brought in the
Early,
ship's counselor wearing tight outfits rather than a Starfleet uniform.
yeah, yeah. Their uniforms in first season were just all over the place. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's true.
and that was Gene Roddenberry's 1 year with them. After, yeah, then they broke. Then I think then it went off with Rick Berman as
Yeah,
more of a
Rick
producer.
Berman was there from the beginning, but he was kind of a side to Roddenberry, and they were intended basically for Roddenberry to hand it over. But
Right,
they had problems with, of course, the writers' strike during that time, so they had to reuse some scripts from Star Trek Phase Two and make some things work. So sometimes I think their first season gets a bad rap. It's not Roddenberry's fault necessarily, but
ah,
he was a much better rewrite man than he was an original writer.
right,
In fact, he was known as the best rewrite man in Hollywood, and that's how he got Star Trek to begin with. Was that he was the script doctor on just about every other show that was around, and so when he went to Desilu with that, that was something that they knew already,
right.
because Herb Solo said he came in with not dressed very well. His hair wasn't combed. He said, you must be a genius, or else you would never be able to get this far in this business."
That's a great point. That is
Yeah,
a great. It's funny with the writer's strike. I hadn't thought about that in '87 or '86, I guess,
yeah,
when the first year of Next Gen is coming out. I did say I was watching a little behind the scenes on this film, and apparently, in a scene, I think it was a scene, yeah, very first scene, a deleted scene when Spock is being born out in. It almost looked like where they went on location to Vulcan,
yeah.
but it's outside, and he's being born. And J.J. Abrams said, "You can't see this, but there's writers that are on strike just beyond us, and they're all shouting, 'Bring in Shatner! Bring in Shatner!'"
Yeah,
But apparently in '08, they were also dealing with the writer's strike when they were making the film.
yeah, yeah. That works out. Well, we need to go, but
We have looked at
we get
many different. Yeah.
We know how our conversations go around here. We'd be here all night, but I think we should let our viewers go for now.
Oh,
And
but we just started talking about the next generation.
that's true.
I'll
We're
stop.
gonna have to do that when we run out of ideas. That's where we're going. I think
You got it.
we can just ad lib all of that. Okay. Thank you for joining us. We will, if you want to see some of our past things, if you've just joined us and you haven't seen some of our past conversations, they're all archived on YouTube and now also available audio only as a podcast on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you get your podcasts. So we hope that you will take us up on that and join us in 2 weeks. You're going to be away next week.
Right.
But in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark. So we hope that you'll join us for that. So until then, thank you, Professor O. We will see you in a couple of weeks. And don't forget to subscribe. And thank you very much for joining us. Until then, don't go far.